All right, we have a special guest with us. He is the head football coach of the reigning three-time state champion Phoebus Phantoms, victorious on Friday night up in Richmond over the Highland Springs Springers, 23-7. Dominant performance by their defense, outgetting them 306-68, and also holding them to a mere 4 yards rushing, 36 wins and counting for Coach Jeremy Blend. We say hello and congrats to Coach. Had to be a very enjoyable weekend for you, and I know you've had big wins in the past as a player, as an assistant coach, and now coming off three state championships in a row as a head coach. Regular season games, playoff games, championship games, last year's crazy finish at Liberty against Salem. But be honest, this one has to stack up there with some of the best regular season wins you've had, especially to begin a season.
I would absolutely agree with you. Absolutely.
What makes this win so special, number one? Because we hear a lot of coaches give the cliche of it's just another game, it's 1-0. We got to go 1-0 next week. You got Woodside coming up on Thursday, I think it is, at Todd Stadium in Newport News. But and from your perspective, what made this win so meaningful as you begin this journey?
Well, I think when you consider the magnitude of the matchup, I mean, you're talking about one of the perennial powerhouses in the state of Virginia has been since, Coach Johnson has taken over. What they have been able to accomplish and the opportunity to have a, very rare 757 versus 804 matchup in the early parts of the season is always a great thing. And then when you look at the histories of both programs, the more recently, but throughout the history here at Phoebus, we've had some good matchups, but I think this one certainly stacks up at the top.
I want to dive into your players and how you guys got this done and some of the guys that helped make this possible, be it players and coaches in general. But you know how things are with headlines and storylines. And I even mentioned on the podcast just the other day that, this to me was not an upset or a surprise. I certainly don't think that was the case for your kids going in. You expected to win. Every time you take the field, you guys have a a mindset, have a standard. And every game we predict and project, it's not always the case. You figure, one team's going to probably win. This was viewed as sort of an evenly matched game, even though a lot of us, me included, thought the Springers might come out on top. For you all, when you look at how you prepared for this matchup, do you feel like one of the pluses you had in your favor was defense, championship football defense always travels, no matter who you see, and the way you play defense is always going to pretty much keep you in a ball game?
Well, we do like to hang our hats on the defensive phase. However, we do believe in all three phases of our programs, ability and game. So for us, what we've been able to accomplish, over the past few years, just trying to bring things more collectively together. Climbing out of shadows, we can all say whatever it is, man. I just think for myself and my staff, we've done a great job with building our own identity separate from, Stan Sexton, who did an amazing job during his time, as well as Bill D. Those guys, they set a standard, and I feel like I've been able to set my own standard, and that's what this thing's about, man. So I think guys buy in. My coaches, we certainly buy in, and the kids believe in us and believe in what we're doing.
Mhm. Well, and you played for the late great Bill D, won championships there. And the stat that I put up in our preview for you guys in our Class 4 Top 10 on VirginiaPreps.com, the thing that just boggles my mind about the defense, doesn't matter which players are playing defense for you. If it's the Xavier DBs, if it's the Jordan Basses, the Dominic Davenports, the guys like now that you have, such as the Markus Hopsons, the Caleb Tillerys, and others that we'll dive into in a moment, just once in the past 23 years has Phoebus given up more than 14 points per game in a season, which is just staggering. I'm not sure you can find many other defenses in the state that stack up there. For you, you just talked about it as a coach. You guys have always had success. When you took over back in, I think it was 2012, somewhere in the last 10, 12 years or so, what did you yourself and then your staff do to get elevated? Because you guys were good, but you were having some heartbreak in the playoffs. You lost a championship game to Heritage of Lynchburg. What did you go and do to kind of get yourself to that next level from your eyes?
I mean, just a little bit of advice that I would give any coach coming into it, man. I tried to hang on to something that wasn't me. I had to become my own person in this field. Coach Sexton, was an outstanding coach, and he did it the way that he did it. Bill D, built this thing, and he did it the way he did it. I couldn't pretend to be those guys, and I think early on, in order to keep the community and those that say they supported me, as supportive as I needed them to be at the time as a young coach, I tried to do too much of being someone that I wasn't. Once I climbed out of that shadow, and I was younger, but once I learned that, listen, this thing is about you and what that you've put the time in, you got to believe in your own process. And when I started to step outside of myself and look at how things needed to be ran, especially considering the generation of kids that we now get, as opposed to what it was when I played and when I first started coaching here, I started to see that real shift. And it also helped me because I had a new coaching staff. With the exception of a few guys that coached with Coach Sexton or Coach D, it was a brand new staff. So we had to establish ourselves, man. And I think with my leadership and their buy-in, we have certainly been able to build something special, even, contrary to all the naysayers. That's what makes it even more special.
No doubt about it. Certainly, you know how it was in the 90s. Phoebus was that dominant team in the PD in the state. Now Phoebus has taken that mantle here in the 2000s and so many, many big games and ways. Your squad and past championship teams at Phoebus have had unique talents and personalities, and you have that with this 2024 squad that hopes to continue to mold and shape themselves. One guy that in particular that I just love watching, and I think he's just a fantastic interview, is your lineman two-way guy. You know where I'm going. He's going to Howard and Markus Hopson. And you've had, like I said, unique personalities. I think back to Baby D and other guys that have played at Phoebus, Taj Boyd at quarterback. The list goes on and on. What makes Hobson? He had a great quote in the paper about "We're not the underdogs, we're the big dogs." You have to love that as a coach. Makes you smile. I see. What makes him, be it on the field, off the field, such a unique player and leader?
Oh, number one, he's a genuine person, man. I mean, his personality is contagious. You enjoy being around him. The kid works extremely hard. He's not a kid that's walking around just going off of God-given talent or size. He's a kid that does put a lot of time and effort into it. He's also a smart football player. And that's, what he does in the classroom. He brings that right onto the football field. His mother, his family have done a great job with him. He is successful because of, the community around him as well. He's got a great support system. So like many other kids in this program, man, I mean, guys like him, they believe in it. Marcus has been doing this since his freshman year. He started from the very beginning, so it's fun to watch him, to watch that process and how much he has grown. And, so yeah, that quote the other day, you couldn't help but put a smile on your face.
No doubt. And you have some very fine student athletes. I want to hit on that because you have guys that are getting it done athletically and in the classroom that are going to college. He's one of them. Noah Jefferson's headed to Delaware. You have Najee Gay going to NC Central, among others that will get an opportunity to play at the next level. But what keeps that chip on the shoulder motivation? I spoke with him and he's like, I'm one of the smaller linemen, but I embrace that. I see a guy in the NFL who's like my size and I want to be that one day. What keeps the motivation and chip on the shoulder, the hunger when you win 3 state championships in a row? You have a win streak that's 35, now 36. Certainly they want to have a place in history, but it's easy to rest on laurels. How does this group not do that?
Well, it's complacency, man, is a place of comfort, and it's not hard as human beings for us to fall victim to it. So, we do things throughout the day to keep these guys to work and push them. Little challenges. I say this all the time, man, and I'm sure people listen, and it does sound cliche, but you know, we have goals and we have objectives, and we legit and goals and objectives are important for a reason. You can put all of these wonderful things on paper, you can hang them up all over the place, but if you don't read them, buy into them, work towards them, they're just there for show. We do. We read them, we buy into them, we work towards them, we keep them in front of them on a daily basis. These kids can recite them inside out at this point, and that's what it's all about, man. Buying is an important thing. If you're focused on those little things, you don't have time to become complacent. So that does help us remain sharp.
Before we highlight some other guys that have contributed in the last game and then we'll for the rest of the season, looking at the Highland Springs game that you just finished up, and I know you have 9 more to go regular season. You hope to have 14 more in this 2024 campaign and the quest for a four-peat. What were the main points of emphasis, and did they deviate much from other big games you've had in the past? As you went into that game with Highland Springs, what were the things you had to check off on the list, or goals that you had to get done in order to come out on top in this game and get out to that early lead and maintain and extend it?
Well, the first thing that we wanted to really focus on, we anticipated an extremely electric environment. And if you were there that night, anyone that was there would have had the opportunity to see that was probably one of the better football environments that I have been a part of. And they were extremely hospitable. Respect was given all over the place. So when it just came down to playing football, it was really fun. But the environment itself was something that we knew early on that we couldn't allow ourselves to become victims of, fall victim to, the chaos that's going to come with it, the music, the lights, the crowd. It was an intimate sideline. So, you could pretty much see and hear everything happening from the sideline that was, close to you or in the stands. So, I think our kids handled that extremely well. Even to get to the field house where their old field house where their visitors actually are housed prior to the game. We had to go through a crowd of our fans and their fans. So that was interesting in itself, but it was fun. It's what made the game fun. So I think the first box that we had to check and we did a very good job of was, staying focused and not allowing the environment to become an issue.
Let's talk about your quarterback, Maurikus Banks. We spoke back at your benefit game with Maury, reigning Class 5 champs over there at Palatine Field, Norfolk. Hey, he's still just a 10th grader. He had that touchdown pass to cap his freshman year in the most dazzling of ways with Keontae Gray against Salem. Ran for 65 yards on 7 attempts, 8 of 10 for a buck 12. What'd you see from him and his poise? I mentioned to someone the other day, you told me if I'm right or wrong. You remember Sean Mitchell, who played for Oscar Smith, went to William and Mary. He reminds me a little bit like Sean Mitchell did when he was a 9th, 10th grader. Do you see some similarities?
Well, for him, the thing that I see about Reek is he's been around this program for a long time. He was a young 8, 9 year old coming out here watching us work out, a part of the workouts, so he's very familiar with what we do and how we do things. Secondly, he's growing into his own. He's climbing from behind the shadows of any quarterback that has come before him. He's stepping out into the light, becoming more vocal. He's really honing in on that leadership thing. So, for us to watch his transformation right now, it's not something that we're surprised about. And he'll be the first to tell you he has a long ways to go. There's some things that we, point out on a daily basis that he needs to work on. And it's all in the means to keep him sharp and continue to help him grow as an individual as well as a leader on this team. So, I certainly see some, he's going to be a special, special one. He'll be a name that I believe will be talked about for years to come. But the big thing that I really enjoy about him is he doesn't allow what people are saying or writing about him to become an issue. He's starting to get some notoriety and the kid really manages it well. He truly is a humble individual.
Can't forget about the guy in the backfield with him, the running back, the Bull, as he's nicknamed, Davion Roberts, who quietly had 29 rushing touchdowns last year. I said because Phoebus has had, the lineage of running backs, the Elon Lewises, the Antoine Womacks, the Sean Alstons, the Dennis Mathis. I can mention 10, 15 more, but our time is limited. He ran for 100 yards on the Springers, and I'll eat my crow and put some ketchup on it now, Coach, because even though I had some question marks about Highland Springs, I saw him in the scrimmage with Kings Fork, and we all fall victim to scrimmages. People did, certainly with your benefit game with Maury. You didn't show your whole hand, but I didn't think anybody would easily run for 100 yards on the Springers. And I'm not saying he did it easily, but he ran for over 100 yards on that defense. Tell us about him and that offensive line, just that in sync congruence to run the ball on that defense, how you got it done.
Well, first of all, starting off with Davion, I don't think he gets enough credit. They see his size and they look past him. But this kid, I mean, he runs like a tank, man. He is an extremely athletic individual. He's a smart football player. Like he really does grasp what we are trying to accomplish, so he understands the scheme inside out. And he makes minor adjustments throughout the game because of his intellect. But when it's all said and done, when you put an obstacle in front of him, he's focused in on achieving that mission and he's a tough tackle. He is a tough tackle for any one individual. If you watch him run, a lot of times he makes that first person is going to miss, and not just through his skill set and his ability to, shake you and get past you. I mean, this kid will run right through you. That's what makes him special. And then when you fast forward to the offensive line, I mean, we have 4 kids that are returning starters up there, 3-year starters across the board at that offensive line position, and so that's what makes that special as well, and then we have a new guy coming into the fold that's been part of the program since his 8th grade year, and Byron Gilliam. So, it's a really humble group. They work really hard. They take pride. They know that they're going to go in and they might not be the biggest week in and week out, but when you stack them up and you ask them to do what they need to do, those guys like getting their hands dirty.
Our guy, Coach Jared Jenkins, was putting out video for us on the VA Preps Twitter account during the game. The opening kickoff, I think it was. Was that Brendan Thompson who absolutely had that monster hit? Because if it is, you remember I said it to you last year after your scrimmage with Salem, and I wrote this in the preview. He makes hits that make you wince from the stands. I mean, him and Caleb Tillery forget the linebacker spot. Tell me more about them and the other guys that are stepping up for you across the ball, be it offense, defense, special teams that made this thing, because that felt like I wasn't there. Was that a tone setter? Did you feel like the guys fed off that play?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Brendan is what you would call that punisher. He is a tone setter, no doubt. And when he hones in on it, he will finish you. Um, he and Caleb are fun to watch. I believe this for the past few years that these guys are the best tandem in the state of Virginia. I don't think you'll find a better one. You looked at what Salem had last year with their two guys in the state championship game, and those two guys were awesome. I mean, they had the size, they had the skill set, Power Five guys. And I looked at our two guys and I'm like, yeah, we're undersized, but we're all over the field and we left an impact. And that's what they do. Those guys, they're our unsung heroes, man. They don't get enough credit, man. But I love when people point out and see and recognize what those two kids can achieve and have achieved.
And honestly, in the last couple minutes here, Coach, we thank you for doing this with us here. That has to be a little bit of you feed it to them. All right, these guys are going to Power Five SEC schools. You're good players, but they don't think you're that. Is that honestly? That's got to be that's part of the motivating factor to get them ready to play. They know they're good, but they want to prove they're just as good, if not better, right?
Absolutely. Sizes and everything. And those guys right there, they walk around with that chip on their shoulders. They've been told this their entire lives. And so it doesn't matter what anybody says, they're going to go out there and prove it. And they do a outstanding job week in and week out proving it. And I mean, defensively, we are who we are, and they're a major reason why we are who we are, along with a host of other guys. I mean, we're not a defense or a team rather that's focused on individuals. We understand that we have a host of guys that can get the job done, and these guys are disciplined. They're committed to our process, and they work extremely hard to prove to people that they're just as good as anyone else.
Lastly, as you look at this, now you get ready for Woodside game two, is the challenge in front of you? All right, everybody's going to talk about this, including us in the media, this history, the win streak, going for a four-peat, to enjoy this journey as opposed to the outside noise of, yeah, you want to get there come December, but let's enjoy getting better and growing. Is that what you put in front of them to keep that razor sharp focus and not play down to your competition? How do you go about that?
Well, we honestly we talk about the win streak. It's
Okay.
important. They're going to hear and read about it. We can't shy away from it. So we do keep that in front of them. But we also help them understand that you have to stay grounded. Any moment, any given Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, man, you have an opponent that can beat you. And if you go out there and you look past them and you allow the game to become an interesting one, then you leave it in the hands of, the officials in the end, or you leave it in the hands of just one play that can determine the outcome. So, for us, we do like to talk about a variety of things, and we're open and honest with our guys. There's no need to kid ourselves, man. These kids, we're talking to an extremely, this group right here is extremely experienced. We have several guys that are 4-year starters to 3-year starters. So with this group right here, they've seen it all. They've been in some big games. They've had those moments. They've had close games. Freshmen, those that are starting, that are seniors that started as freshmen, they were a part of the butt whooping that we took over at Oscar Smith. But they were also a part of that grind to get back and redeem ourselves the following year. So the good thing is they've seen both sides of it. So they understand that you can't look past your opponent. No need to. You'll fall victim to, your own success, and you'll put yourself in a bad position. But you also can't kid yourselves and kid ourselves and shy away from the conversation of, you are in a position to do some historical things this year. So let's continue to stay focused on the little things so we can continue to push forward.
Well, they'll be handing out some butt whoopings for sure this year. They are the reigning three-time state champions going for a four-peat, playing a great championship brand of football. Coach Jeremy Blunt, thank you so much. All the best to you. Look forward to seeing you guys down the road, and we'll keep in touch.
All right. I appreciate it.
As head coach Jeremy Blunt with us here. Keep it tuned.